What's going on, guys? We are back in the office for one more video. We will actually be gone for the reaction video, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there this week. What's going on, guys? We are back for the 2026 Belgian Grand Prix. We are racing around Spa Francorchamps this week, my favorite racetrack in the world. It just has a little bit of everything. It's got long straights, high speed corners, medium speed corners, and low speed corners, and it is going to be an absolute treat. Maybe not necessarily in the grand scheme of Formula One in terms of pure performance, but in terms of what we know about these regulations and how these cars perform, I will be fascinated to see what these teams do to account for Spa's unbelievable just length. It is the longest circuit on the calendar for a reason, and it is going to present a whole host of challenges for these teams as we get going. But we are here to make our predictions for what we're going to see this weekend. We're going to be talking biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointments, our qualifying top three, our race podium rather, and well, as always, we will wrap things up with our one crazy prediction. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into this thing. Let's kick things off with our pick for biggest positive surprise. And I am going with a driver who has been the host of a lot of conversations over the last week or two, depending on how far back you want to go. My biggest positive surprise for the Belgian Grand Prix weekend is Max Verstappen. There has been a lot of talk about that Red Bull car, specifically the rear wing and its effects being driven by Max Verstappen. Obviously, this is not the last time we saw it. We saw it both in Austria and the last time out around Silverstone, where the rear wing supposedly not closing all the way, upsetting that Red Bull and spinning Max off once in qualifying in Austria, and then actually DNFing out of the British Grand Prix as he sent it in a bit too hard and ended up in the gravel. So there has been a lot of conversation surrounding Max Verstappen and that Red Bull car and what they're going to do, how are they going to overcome this. But I think that this is lining us up perfectly for a really good weekend from Max. He got a break. He got a nice week off for the Red Bull team to sort of analyze the car, see what's going on, and get a wrap on it. Spa is going to be featuring 5 straight mode zones in this weekend. And so that is a lot of opportunities for this Red Bull rear wing to make an appearance. And I think a lot of people are potentially underrepresenting what Red Bull realistically can do. Spa feels like one of those tracks that's right up Max's alley, and I think he's going to want to come out and sort of make up for the misconceptions and misgoings of both the Austria qualifying as well as the Silverstone Grand Prix. And so this is going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. I think we see Max end up back on the podium. Spoilers. And yeah, I think it'll be a good weekend for the Dutch driver. All right, let's go ahead and move right along to our pick for biggest disappointment this weekend. And I'll tell you what, if there is a single category that has gotten almost impossible to predict correctly, it has to be this one, because the gaps between the top of the field to the middle of the field and then the middle of the field to the bottom of the field has probably never been wider. And since I've been watching Formula One, I feel like it's always been like a Formula A and a Formula B. But realistically this year, it feels like there's like a Formula 1A, a 1B, and a 1C, just because of the field spread. And so it really becomes hard to predict biggest disappointments. But we're gonna conquer anyway. We're gonna continue on, and we are gonna do our best, because I feel like there is a solid pick, and it might be my least confident pick for biggest disappointment, but at the same time, I think there is a driver that might be due for a bit of a regression. Maybe not, because the car has actually been very good and he has been doing very well. My pick for biggest disappointment this weekend is going to be Liam Lawson. He has been on an absolutely incredible run of form. That RB has absolutely taken a step forward, or a leap forward almost, and has consistently occupied the top 10 with both drivers over the last handful of weekends, and Liam has been doing spectacularly. But unfortunately this week, it feels like one of those weekends where, sort of in the counterpoint to the Max Verstappen discussions, being about how you're not sure if he's going to be able to perform, yada yada yada, and then doing well. I have a feeling Liam has been getting a lot of positive press and a lot of eyes on him, that potentially we could, maybe depending on the situation. Spa does present a whole host of challenges. We'll see how these teams handle them, as I mentioned before. But I'm going to pick Liam Lawson here because he's been solidly in the points for a while now, and I think an off weekend finishing outside the points, potentially behind teammate Arvid Lindblad. I think that's good enough for a biggest disappointment, but I guess we'll see. Let's move things right along to qualifying top 3. We are going to begin in P3, and we are going with the Mercedes of George Russell here in qualifying. It really feels like George has not been the best over a single lap, but I do think the Mercedes is going to be very strong around Spa. Very much a power circuit, to say the least. And while I don't think that Mercedes has the best chassis, I think the chassis will be good enough to handle the later sectors of Spa. Obviously, it's going to be a big help in Sector 1, but Sectors 2 and 3 a little bit more complicated before obviously running all the way down towards Blanchimont and the bus stop will be more power, and so I think the Mercedes will do very well. But George has not necessarily been a qualifying master this year, and I think it continues, but still good enough for a top 3. And so George Russell, my pick for P3 this weekend. As we move on now to P2, and I am going with the old tried and true of what many consider to be a qualifying driver in Charles Leclerc. Obviously, I feel like we have not seen Charles's best efforts every weekend when it comes to qualifying, but I feel like the win last time out in the British Grand Prix potentially might unlock a little bit of the stress in the weight upon Charles's shoulders. Obviously, with Lewis winning in Spain, Charles eager to get back on the podium, eager to get back on the top step, taking on the pressure of performing in the new regulations, gets his win, potentially a little freer, a little lighter going into the next race weekend. Got an opportunity to take some time off, absorb the win, relax, let it go with the flow, get into Belgium with a clear heart and clear eyes. And I think we see a reinvigorated Charles Leclerc this weekend, starting on the front row, but only in P2. But that leaves one and only position left, and that is pole position. And for this weekend, I am going with Kimi Antonelli, who will be driving the best car on the grid and who has been one of the better qualifiers this season, especially compared to his teammates. And Kimi, obviously, I apologize for that, everybody. Kimi has been very good over a single lap, and he has been driving with a lot of confidence. As long as the Mercedes underneath him is reliable and is running, Kimi has shown that he will be there to take advantage of the performance, and I think this weekend will be no different. Kimi's had a unlucky run of form when it comes to car reliability over the last handful of weekends, and I think we see a bit of a return to form for Kimi, starting it all in qualifying on pole position. But there we have it, guys. My qualifying top 3. We have a George Russell 3rd, Charles Leclerc P2, and a Kimi Antonelli pole position. Since it is not a sprint weekend in Belgium this year, thank God we've moved away from that experiment. It didn't work, and I hope it never happens again. Let's move on now to our race podium. This will be the conclusion, the 44 laps of Spa Francorchamps on Sunday. I, for one, am fascinated to see what happens here. I think over a single lap, it'll be interesting, but over a race distance, that is where the differences in these cars are truly going to be made. Let's kick things off with P3 in our race podium, and I am going with Max Verstappen to finish on the podium. This is giving all the telltale signs of an okay qualifying, a slow start, as is Red Bull's MO this year, and then a drastic charge through the field for Max, eager to get back in the good graces of himself and the car. And I think we'll see Max finish on the podium here in P3, and I think it'll be a really good result for Max around this circuit, and I think this is going to be one where he earns it for sure. Let's move on now to P2, and I am going with George Russell. This is going to be, I think, over the race distance where the Mercedes really will set itself apart. I do think that George will potentially take time to make the move around Charles Leclerc, but at the same time, this feels like over the course of a race distance, especially at a track like Spa, the Mercedes will be able to, flex its muscles a bit, really show what it's made of, and start to separate itself literally and figuratively over the rest of the field over the 44 laps we're going to see. So that leaves us with our one and only winner, the 2026 Belgian Grand Prix champion, Kimi Antonelli. This one is going to be a clear case of start on pole, lead from there. If he can make it down the Kemmel Straight, I think it will be smooth sailing for Kimi Antonelli. I think in clear air that Mercedes will clear off, literally, from the rest of the field while others sort of jockey behind him. give him enough, enough time, enough corners, enough laps. That clear air will make the difference, and he will be able to separate himself. So should nothing else happen, I think this is looking like a pretty solid win for Kimi Antonelli if this, if my predictions do come true, which they will. Obviously, I know we'll. But yeah, this feels like whoever can really solidify themselves into the lead at any given point looks as though it's going to be the case of they will get the win. Spa is very much like that. It's a lot tougher than you think to follow through sectors 2 in the beginning of sector 3, and if you're able to generate that gap, not let the cars behind get that overtake mode, that extra power, and especially if they then have to deal with whoever's coming up from behind them, that gives the leader an opportunity to move forward. So I think it's going to be a Kimi Antonelli back on the top step once again, making up for his unreliability of that Mercedes over the last few rounds, and he will once again garner himself 25 points on his bid for a championship. But there we have it, guys. A Max Verstappen P3, George Russell P2, and a Kimi Antonelli win in Belgium. All right, we have arrived, our final prediction for the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, and it is our one trusty, tried and true, one crazy prediction for Belgium. And we are going with something truly crazy. It is something unbeknownst to him this season and forcing him out of his comfort zone of finishing just outside the points. We are once again returning to our tried and true Nico Hülkenberg in the points for Audi. Talk about a team that has lived in P11. Talk about a driver who cannot get past that 10th place barrier. I mean, we have Gabriel Bortoleto finishing 8th in Silverstone, and Nico Hülkenberg unfortunately not finishing the race. And so this is just a prime time moment of, if it's not going to happen here, I'm not sure it's going to happen. The Audi has once again just been a roller coaster of a car to follow this season. They show really decent pace, but then just fall off randomly. I think this weekend is when they get it done, especially if my biggest disappointment is going to come in. I think we're going to need a little bit of chaos towards the back of the grid. I think we're going to get it. Nico Hülkenberg in the points. You heard it here. But guys, there we have it. Our predictions for the Belgian Grand Prix weekend is done and dusted. We will be back when it is all said and done to talk about what we saw over the course of the weekend. I am going to be traveling again, so now I can't promise exactly when the review will come out, but you will be seeing it away from home, and it might be pretty quick when it's all said and done, as I'm going to be traveling, and as much as I love making these videos, I'm going to be in New York, and so it's going to be a whole lot of fun. But regardless, I hope you are ready for the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. Spa, absolutely my favorite track in the world. Can't wait to see these new regulations go here for the better and the worse. It's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one, and I'll see you in the next one.